Hey everyone, I am Cory Lee, the content manager here at Discover, and today I am so excited to do another Facebook Live for you all. Usually, when we do these lives, we talk with destination representatives. We've covered some amazing destinations over the past few months, from Barcelona to Iceland and kind of everywhere between. It's been a really fun journey on these lives, but today we're going to switch things up a bit and we're going to actually be talking with a disabled influencer, entrepreneur, and travel addict. His name is Martyn Sibley, and I'm so excited. So, hey Martyn, it's so good to see you today.
How you doing, Cory? It's great to catch up with you.
Yeah, you too. I follow you a lot online, and you're like one of the busiest people I know. So thank you for taking the time today.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, of course. And I told everyone, you're kind of the ultimate entrepreneur. It seems like you have your hands in a lot of different baskets currently. So can you please tell everyone about your businesses that you run and what all you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I guess that one of the obvious parts, particularly when in real life, not so much on web camera, is I'm a wheelchair user. And Cory, you and I have got the same disability, spinal muscular atrophy. So yeah, there's that whole narrative of living life from a wheelchair user perspective and the kind of barriers that have come about in all parts of life, really. And then I did uni. I did economics and a master's in marketing. I got my first job in a sort of disability NGO, not for profit, and got a lot of grounding around disability rights and disability inclusion. Found social media and started blogging and doing all the good stuff that we know. I know you do a lot, Cory, with your sort of content and community, both for yourself and Discover. And it's obviously such a big, powerful tool to give a voice to disabled people and get the word out about the kind of needs and wants of the disability community. And so I suppose with that narrative of disability, social media marketing, it was also interesting looking at the business side of it. So I co-founded Disability Horizons magazine, which is still running. I co-founded Accomable with Shrin as well. And that was acquired by Airbnb 3 years ago, I think it was now. And then last April, I co-founded a specialist disability marketing agency called Purple Goat. So it's all around inclusion, social media, and entrepreneurship and business.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been a big fan of like Disability Horizons. I think it was probably the first online outlet that I ever did a guest post for or even wrote for. So back in like 2013, 2014 era. So yeah, I've been following ever since then and known who you were. So it's good to talk today and kind of delve more into it and what all like inspired you to start those businesses. But I know you told everyone, like me, you also have SMA, spinal muscular atrophy. And I'm wondering, like, because I know how I feel about it, but do you think that growing up with a disability inspired you to work harder and achieve more? Like, how much did disability impact that?
Yeah, I often have that debate with friends, and even just thinking to myself, and these lockdown moments where we're more chilled at home. What would I be doing if I was still a 37-year-old man from Cambridgeshire in England, but not with SMA? And of course, it's very hard to say exactly how things would play out, but I mean, it definitely has, created life experiences and opportunities that were quite frankly different. I mean, I've had to use a wheelchair since I was about 3 years old, and that photo there with the tiger face paint was me when I was about 7 or 8 years old, I think, maybe a bit younger. And yeah, so I think that there definitely were difficulties around getting into school and socializing with friends and all these sort of barriers that I talk about, whether it's the environmental barriers or the social barriers, the sort of attitudes and perception of disability. And so, yeah, I think also as the world seems to view disability, and we can go off on tangents about media coverage and about government policy, but all the different ways the narrative of disability has been created and framed over decades, I think it's fair to say that parts of the world view disability in a sort of, sympathetic and a patronizing sometimes way. And so I think in the end, the best way to get on in life is just, get your head down, work hard, and then the results and the achievements speak more than just trying to have some back and forward argument with someone. I think it's that kind of let your actions do the talking. And so, there were times I was probably trying to prove the world wrong. I think the last 5 to 10 years, my goals are more aligned with what makes me happy and what I enjoy, and doing it around my own passions and wishes. But certainly teenage years, maybe early 20s, there was a kind of feistiness of showing the world what we can do as disabled people.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, that's one of the big reasons why I even started Curb Free with Cory Lee, was because I kept going to like job interviews and getting turned down, and was even told by one interviewer that I could do that job because it involved some traveling. And so I thought, like, I'm going to show him. And so I started an entire website devoted to travel as a wheelchair user. So, I think, there are a lot of like benefits to living with a disability, kind of growing up with a disability and what all that entails. So what do you think, in your opinion, the benefits of having a disability are?
Yeah, I mean, the point you made there is sort of, I guess, around challenge and adversity and obstacles can kind of fire us on to go out and do amazing things. And I guess there's some element of this disability or not disability. I think all people have those moments in life, and there's something around that mindset of, do you become a victim? Do you get beaten down by it and give up? Or do you, as you and I have very much done, kind of say screw you and then go off and kind of prove them wrong with gusto? So I think that maybe when those moments happen, they don't seem like a blessing or a positive. That they're kind of crap, right? It's horrible if someone doubts you and says you can't do something, if you can't get the job you wanted, if you can't get the partner that you've always wanted to be with, like all those kind of things in the moment, then they're not good. But then I think as you go through life and you sort of keep going, you look back and the dots join where you go, actually, that was really, really difficult, but it kind of helped build my character, and it taught me something. And I guess I am an eternal student. I'm always very curious. I always like learning new things. I hope that when I'm in my 70s, 80s, 90s, I'm still learning. So I think that's around the mindset part as well. But ultimately, you could say disability is a bit of a teacher. And if we take them as lessons and funnel that for positivity, we end up giving a lot back to society, and we can have a happy, fulfilled life as an individual as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And our mutual friend Sana is watching.
Sana.
Miss you too, Sana.
Yeah, we miss you.
And I think you and Sana went to Finland together. Is that right?
Yeah, well, Sana lives in Finland, so it was an inclusive blogging experience. So it wasn't only disabled bloggers or disabled influencers, but Sana was involved in the project, even partly running it, I think, or some involvement in setting it up. And I applied and went on the trip. And so I'd met Sana randomly on a beach in Tenerife. I just went up to her. I was like, how are you finding Tenerife? And then we found out that we had SMA. It's like the SMA mafia out there, to be honest. Also, I actually met Sana before. And then, so we met in Helsinki and spent a few lovely days in the town or the city. And we went out and did husky dog sledding, minus 32 degrees, which was like, I'm not used to that kind of cold weather. And then I believe, did you go a year or two after to Helsinki as well?
I think I went about a year after you guys did that tour. I did not go husky sledding. So didn't do that adventure, but I've been to Finland twice now, and had sauna both times. I mean, Finland's one of my favorite places in the world. So I think we all need to plan a trip and go together.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah, because you and I, we've spoke quite a lot over the years with
Yeah,
some of these kind of chats, and we've had some, calls offline as well. So we've always had that, similar interest in inclusion and travel, but we've never been in the actual same room together yet, have we?
yeah, yeah. Not yet, but it's gonna happen
It
post.
will happen. Yeah.
And we'll get more into travel in just a bit. I know you've traveled extensively, so there's a lot of travel knowledge to cover from you. But on the website, you say that your vision is to live in a world without barriers, prejudice, or discrimination. And what steps do you think that both able bodied people and disabled can take to help achieve that goal and make the world overall more inclusive?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think that since I launched Purple Goat last April, where our client base is, they are, businesses and brands, and predominantly able-bodied or non-disabled people. So I think it's taught me a lot as to how pretty much the majority of non-disabled people aren't trying to, be negative to disability. It's an unawareness. It's a kind of ignorance to the topic. So I think that there's been something, back to my point about curious and always learning. I've learned a lot about kind of the fear that there is from people, that they don't want to say the wrong word to a disabled person. They don't want to try and do something, accessible, but get it wrong. And then there's a big PR media story about how they screwed up. And so I think that, there is more awareness now, but there's also a lot of fear. And then that's not just businesses, that's everyday people that just don't have that engagement with disability. So I think in terms of that side of the coin, it is about educating and sort of, giving innovation and disruption and, solutions, but from a place of kind of calmness and kindness rather than being rowdy and angry.
Exactly.
Now, don't get me wrong, like from the other side, when we've spent our life in a world that hasn't really been designed or equipped for our particular example as wheelchair users, but that's the same for, deaf people, blind people, neurodiverse people, the whole disability community. It's actually understandable that we get a bit frustrated and impatient and angry. And I'm sure there's times over the years where I've, felt a little bit kind of customer service representative, and I'm kind of like, well, you've given me the room that's not wheelchair accessible. What is going on? So, we as a disabled side, we've always, struggled and tried to overcome these barriers. But I guess in the end, it's about us having the confidence and the skills to point out the problem, but also to help provide solutions. And I think in the end, it's bridging the two sides. And if we can bring the two sides together to work more together, that's where the answers come from.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. I mean, I always say that like you have to have a positive attitude. Like if you're traveling disability, that like that's the number one thing that I think is a necessity, because something on it is going to go wrong. I mean, at some point something's going to go wrong. So if you can just like approach that with positivity and like know that it's going to get resolved one way or another, you'll have like a better trip overall. So yeah, when you said that, I was here like, yes, amen. Like I completely agree.
And I think, particularly in my time at the charity, the disability charity, there is higher unemployment of disabled people. There's, more difficulties with accessible tourism to find the right information, let alone find the actual, hotel with the accessible wet room. So I think on the one side, we have to talk about that it's more difficult, quite frankly. But I also think there's another angle where, it's exactly what we just said before, that when you have the solutions and you bridge the gap, everybody wins. And obviously the business case of inclusion is getting a little bit more traction now, that it's not just the right thing to do and it's not the legal thing to do, which of course with the American with Disabilities Act and the Equalities Act in the UK, they're all very valid. But actually, if a business understands that they invest in inclusion, they can make more profit in the long run. I think that's more of a carrot than a stick argument.
Yeah, exactly. And we have a Ross says, when people badge accessibility only in relation to wheelchairs. Yes, exactly. I mean, the word accessible, it can mean so many different things to different people. And that's one of the top things that I think businesses need to realize, is that there's not a one-term solution to the word accessible, you know. So yeah, that's something I always try to get across. And I know that in addition to being an entrepreneur, you're also a really big traveler. You've taken some remarkable journeys to a variety of countries and destinations. So what are some of your favorite experiences that you've had while traveling? I guess if you could only pick 2 or 3, what would those 2 be?
Yeah. Yeah, but I guess a quick kind of context was like I traveled a lot as a child with my family, and they did all the research and problem solving, and you know, things went wrong, and that was more on them to fix it, if you like. And then when I was at university, I really wanted to go away for the first time with the personal care assistants, not with, you know, mum and dad and all that kind of stuff. And so my first solo trip when I was like 21 was to Australia. So I was literally, I want to go to the other side of the world just because it's really far away and really difficult. So I see you've got the Australia picture up there. I love that. So that was me in Sydney, after a lot of planning and research and budgeting and saving up, and a very long flight to Singapore with one overnight stay, and then another long flight to Australia. And it was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measures. I was very nervous of all the many things that could have gone wrong, but equally just inspired by the people, the places, all the things that you and I know to be the amazing stuff around traveling, right, Cory? It's the food, it's the people, it's the experiences. So yeah, Australia is definitely one of the big ones. I'd probably say another one would be California with Shrin. And that was because we co-founded Disability Horizons on that trip, or we had the idea during that trip. We also had some problems finding accessible hotels. And that, of course, was, you know, the preamble to a Commable that, as I mentioned, was sold to Airbnb because of the experiences, you know, particularly on that trip together. But, you know, it was wild. We had long rides in an adapted car between San Francisco to Vegas and Vegas to LA. Obviously, I can't talk about Vegas, Cory, because what happened in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, definitely that. When I say California, obviously Vegas isn't in California, but that trip we did for sort of 12, 14 days in 2010, so over 10 years ago now, that was another one. And then probably I'm going to go Barcelona, because it's the place I can get to within an hour and a half flight from England, but it rains a lot less and it's a lot warmer and sunnier, which I love. And the city of Barcelona is very accessible. The public transport's very great for disabled people, particularly wheelchair users. And yeah, it's got the beach, it's got the culture, the Gaudi Park there. I'm in Parkwell, a lot of the Gaudi, you know, attractions there. And yeah, so, and the food, and yeah, I could go on and on, but I'm definitely going to live in Barcelona one day, I think.
Yeah, me too. Like, I'm ready. Like, we can be roommates. I'm ready to go to Barcelona too. It's one of my favorite cities in the world. And it was actually the last destination that we did a Facebook Live with. So if anyone's watching and wants to learn more about Barcelona, definitely scroll back on our Facebook page and check that video out, because we covered a lot of details in Barcelona. So it's an incredible city. I mean, in my top 3 in the world, I think. Yeah. And Australia too. Australia, California, some really great places you just talked about. Are there any experiences that you've had while traveling, though, that stand out as maybe not so great? And how do you deal with those challenges?
Yeah, because I was actually just reflecting as we were talking that those 3, you know, they're definitely the more developed countries economically. Therefore, I think that's partly why there's a lot better provision around disability and accessible tourism. So I would definitely, Ross, there you went down under, top man. I definitely think there's something about the kind of South America, Africa, parts of Asia where there's less economic ability to invest in infrastructure, therefore it's less accessible. But obviously Japan is more of a developed country, and definitely that would have been number 4 on my list, I reckon. But there's certainly a lot of countries I'd love to go to, but there's a bit more of a concern or a difficulty around the accessibility. Tokyo is phenomenal, actually. They had ramps in all of the underground stations, and they had people that came like literally a one-to-one service of putting the ramp down and helping you get on all of the trains and everything. So that was pretty amazing. But yeah, I mean, in terms of our lesser access experiences, so I did spend a bit of time in Spain in a non-tourism place called Avilés. And I mean, they could still get around most of the city. It was okay. There was less provision of public transport, particularly taxis. There were no wheelchair accessible taxis, but the city was okay. But we took a trip up to the mountain, and I ended up getting lifted out of my wheelchair into the front of this proper like hippie van.
Wow.
And they lifted my wheelchair into the back of the van. So, in terms of it wasn't very accessible, but we just had to find a solution. And this vehicle was powered by like vegetable oil, and it was a very surreal kind of, experience. And then I turned to the driver expecting I'd have to fumble my way through my lesser ability of Spanish. And this lady with dreadlocks and really tanned had a really strong Northern English accent. She was actually from England. It was just quite a random moment, random story. But going up the mountains in Spain was definitely not straightforward access-wise. But I think probably what you and I stand for is there's always a way. You have to just be a bit willing to go out your comfort zone, and I guess trust people that you've maybe not even met before is quite a leap of faith. But ultimately, you can still have those positive experiences even when they're not accessible.
Yeah, definitely. I think when you're traveling, you do have to depend on other people a lot to some degree, and really put your trust in them. And that's why the pandemic is like making traveling so especially difficult for people with disabilities, because I mean, even getting on a plane, we're kind of like manhandled and lifted to get into the plane seat and then get off the plane and all of that. So the pandemic's especially making things more difficult, I think. But in a post-pandemic world, if this ever ends, what is that like the top of your bucket list when it comes to traveling?
Yeah, I guess partly that sentiment I shared before, some of the sort of, South America, Africa, parts of Asia that haven't got that economic development. Specific countries, I'd probably say Brazil and Argentina I'd love to go to. South Africa, I'd really like to go. I think, did you do the safari in South Africa?
I did, yeah, in South Africa.
Yeah, so that looked epic, and that's one of my. Was it Epic Adventures, the name of the company?
It was Epic Enabled.
Epic Enabled, that's the one. So truly epic, right?
Yeah, they are fantastic. I cannot recommend it enough. Yeah,
so that would be one, and then India is somewhere I've always really liked the idea of going to as well.
India is like in my top 2 favorite destinations.
Nice.
Yeah, you got to go. I'll go back with you, and maybe we can do that trip together, because
that'd be cool.
Go back.
And Sunny will be there, I'm sure.
We have a question from Sheila. She says, "How many caregivers do you travel with?"
Yeah, so Australia, there were 2 people, because we were 3 weeks in Australia plus the sort of bit before and after via Singapore. And that was just too much for one person because I have to have assistance in the nighttime to turn over and that kind of stuff. And just generally it would have been too much. So there were 2 people in Australia, but California was one person. That was like maybe a week and a half long or something like that. Generally I'd say it's one person apart from that Australia trip.
Okay. Yeah, nice. And I know that I really want to talk about some of the adventurous activities that you've done while traveling? I know that you've done like skiing, hot air ballooning, scuba diving, and you've even flown a plane, I read on your website. So can you tell us a little bit about those experiences and how they were adaptive?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the adventure stuff's always been, I guess it kind of coincides with the travel a little bit. I remember Scott Rains, but obviously passed away a couple of years ago or so, but almost like the godfather of accessible tourism.
Yeah.
He always used to say that accessible tourism is adventure tourism. So there are times just going on holidays, you said, like being lifted on the aeroplane, all that kind of stuff is quite thrilling / anxiety provoking. So I think there's a nature of adventure just in traveling. But as I was doing more blogging, getting invited to more places, it was kind of a virtuous cycle that some of we did a press trip to Catalonia, and they were like, right, we're going to take you out snorkeling, and then we're going to do hot air ballooning. And it was this like 3 or 4 days of just literally crazy adventure after crazy adventure. We had a camera crew with us, as you can see, the guy pointing the camera in my face. And I'm quite chilled because we drunk Prosecco at 7:30 in the morning in the hot air balloon. So yeah, like there was definitely a lot of adventure that happened because different tourism boards put on the activities. And so they kind of evolved. And then the other one was a separate trip. In fact, I'd given a talk in Barcelona, and someone said, "You've done all this cool stuff. What would you love to do next?" I said, "Oh, I've never done adapted skiing. That would be my, general on my wish list." And someone, Javier, who's on the right in that photo at the top, he came up to me afterwards and said, "There will be a taxi at your hotel tomorrow morning, and we're going to take you adapted skiing." So yeah, that was another very thrill-seeking adapted adventure. I think you may have a photo of the tree climbing when we were chatting earlier. Yeah. So that was in the New Forest. So that's back in the UK, and they had this centre with all sorts of adapted activities for different disabilities. And I'm in it's an older chair now, but that weighs 140 kilograms plus me, and I'm literally hanging up in the trees in the New Forest in the south of England, just swinging around there. So yeah, back to our point earlier, Cory Lee, that whatever you want to do, there generally is a way, and sometimes it involves a bit of adapted equipment. Like here, we're at the Calvert Trust in Devon in the southwest of England, and it's adapted abseiling. And that was one of my older personal care assistants, Philip, who did a lot of my road trips and travels with me. We did a few, purely just went around Europe in a car for 2 or 3 weeks, which is amazing as well. And he's assisting me there. This was the adapted sailing again in Catalonia. So you can tell Catalonia's got a lot of positivity around adapted activities. So they actually had a hoist there that it was able to lift me up and then put me down into that little sailing boat and go off for a couple of hours sailing around. So yeah, with the kind of adapted equipment, the people that have got the right expertise and the general awareness that you and I are trying to get out to people, I think it's the perfect ingredients that as you know, my book is called Everything is Possible, because I truly believe that that's the case.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, those experiences look incredible. I'm like ready to get back on the road and have like all of those experiences. I've done a few of those, but not all of them. So I'm definitely ready for this pandemic to be over and get back to it. Sana says India sounds interesting.
The plan, the Three Musketeers.
Maybe she'll join us.
Definitely.
And what is your top tip for other travelers with a disability? If you could really only give, I guess, like one tip, what would it be?
Yeah, I guess to some degree, there's a few steps I would say about dreaming big, knowing your limitations, but then finding solutions. There's something about those 3 pillars that are quite important. But if you press me for one, I would just say, like, go for the thing you've always dreamt of doing and let that power you.
Yeah, awesome tip. And your book, you mentioned it, is called Everything is Possible. Can you tell us a little bit about the book and where can people find it?
Yeah, sure. So after doing all the blogging and the travels and the press trips, and you know how it is, it kind of it just snowballs, doesn't it? It kind of, you do one and then you get offers to do more, and it's amazing when that kind of thing kicks off. So I just decided it'd be great to put those experiences down in writing. Obviously, I've blogged about it, but sometimes the blogging's a bit chaotic when you're on the road and you're sort of scrambling to get content live. So yeah, I put together a book that breaks down the sort of different trips, and obviously the adventure. There's a chapter on the adventurous things I did as well. It's on Amazon. That's the main place that people tend to buy it. And yeah, I self-published it, and it's got some of the photos that you've been sharing today that sort of bring it to life. But it's, yeah, just sharing the highs and lows of my travels, really.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely go to Amazon and purchase that if you're watching. And I guess to wrap it up, is there anything else you would like to say? And where can people find you online and connect with you?
Sure. I guess the only thought firing off in my head is, we mentioned the pandemic. It's, you know, it's a weird time that, you know, people are having different experiences with it, and there's been difficulties around the mental health of being sort of more stuck at home. And I think, you know, as much as the travel addicts like you and I and many of the people watching it, it's been kind of frustrating. But I kind of remember when I had my back operation when I was about 15 years old, and, you know, for about a year, I couldn't do all the things that I generally would have been wanting to do. But I took that time to really sort of dream of what I wanted to do once I was, you know, better from that back operation. I feel a bit like that with the pandemic. We don't know how long it's going to take to run its course, but just use this time to think of all those places that you wanted to go to, and the activities you've always wanted to do. And if you haven't always wanted to do it, start researching and looking into those options. And yeah, just use this time to even do the planning and the research, because that does take a lot of effort as well. But yeah, just to use this time. And it might not be travel, it might be that business that you want to start, and that, you know, course that you want to study, whatever it is. But use this time for those kind of more positive, fun pursuits, really. In terms of following me, of my at the bottom there, it's got at Martyn Sibley with the Y, because people always put the I. And I'm on like all the usual social channels. I tend to go live around lunchtime UK time every day with little updates about the projects I'm working on. So that's probably the best way to stay in touch with me as well.
Awesome. Yeah, you are live every single day, which is really inspiring to me. It makes me want to work harder. So thank you for doing that. And it was so good to talk with you today about your travels and life with disability. I know our story. We have a lot of the same types of experiences from both having SMA and growing up, but it was good to finally actually see you face to face here online, and hopefully we can meet in person one day. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Absolute pleasure. Great to catch up with you, and obviously Hand Discover. I know Sebastian and the team, and yeah, just really excited where this company is going, and I know it's helping a lot of people with disabilities to travel. So thanks for putting on these programs and the show, and yeah, good luck with everything yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. And thank you all so much for watching today. I hope that you enjoyed our Facebook Live with Martyn Sibley. Definitely follow him on social media and connect with him. He's an awesome individual, and we wait to do another Facebook in a few weeks. So definitely stay tuned for that. And if you want any information on accessible accommodations, please check out undiscovered.com, scrolling right there at the bottom of the screen. Accessible accommodations in a variety of countries and locations. So no matter what you're looking for, you're sure to find a suitable accommodation for your needs. And thank you so much for watching, and I hope everyone has a very great weekend. See you later.